morning from Western North Dakota. The men and women in blue are coming at you straight off the cuff. Good morning, listeners from the Dickinson Police Department. Good morning, Lieutenant Hannah.
Hey, good morning, Lieutenant Klauser. How are you doing?
Life is good here on this fall Friday. Tried not to blow away the last couple of days.
Yeah, it reminds me winter's right around the corner. The old man bones are kind of creaking, so
yeah,
cold weather's right here.
Yeah, October 14th, and my whole thing is family-wise always been like snow by Halloween, so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. If it was anything like last year, we're in for it. We got the bumper reattached to the Bearcat, so we're ready for that massive snowstorm again.
Yeah.
We get it again this year. Yes, I said the S word. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I apologize. I'll bleep that out.
We have had some real nice positive feedback on our last podcast with one of our angels of the airwaves, Tennille Wire. And I thought today, just before we dive into some of our current things happening inside the department, start us off with maybe a quote. Just saw here. It's kind of fitting for our guest today, too, that we have. But it is just a framing of sorts for the listener. And it's from Teddy Roosevelt, so many of you would have heard this one and saw this one around the Rough Rider country and where we are. But it's simply this. It says, do what you can with all you have, wherever you are. And pretty well said there. And we got a guy today who's going to, I think, kind of have that motto, that little bit of around him, surrounding him, that we'll be able to highlight when we get into that conversation. That
is kind of all-encompassing of him. That is a good quote that you brought up, because I think that does kind of highlight, his approach to law enforcement and investigations and stuff. So yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah, I thought of him when I saw it. So hats off to you there before we turn it over to him. He's kind of smiling a little. So, but I think the listeners, they really like to get that monthly update from us and what's happening around the Dickinson Police Department and the city in general, and our combination of the relationship. Mm-hmm. First one I have for him is, we're hiring up here, ladies and gentlemen, listeners out there, anybody paying attention that enjoy this podcast and are following us. We can go up to 4 spots, I think, right now still.
I think 5 right now. Yep.
5. So we're pushing and pedal to the metal on the recruiting right now, and anywhere we can try to pick up some good men and women,
right,
we'll take them.
Yeah, and it's kind of the perfect storm of everything. And you look nationwide in any industry, everybody's really hiring as much as it is. And when you had this this bullet point on you for the first discussion, I was really trying to think here the other day. What's been all of a sudden? Is it a combination of a bunch of stuff? And I think it is. I mean, you look, nationally. The baby boomers are retiring. I mean, we kind of forget about that. I mean, that's a massive bubble right there in the workforce that's kind of leaving. I think it kind of maybe to the more, maybe some more of the, again, causation, equal correlation, whatever. But you look at this like the fentanyl crisis that we got going on right now. Now you have this component of the workforce that's not able to participate. Then you get into the law enforcement side of it, and just where our applicant pool has really been dwindling, again, with the retirements of the baby boomers, obviously. And then I hadn't kept track, but you look at the COVID-19 and how that's really diminished our ranks. I was looking at the Officer Down Memorial page. If none of our listeners out there are familiar with that, odmp.org, officerdownmemorialpage.org, they have a listing of every officer that's killed in the line of duty and the cause of that. And I didn't realize it was this high. We're over 800 officers since the pandemic started that have actually died from COVID-19, and that doesn't account for those that are almost permanently out on medical leave and stuff like that. So you throw that mix in. Again, 800 doesn't sound like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but now you're backfilling. You're covering those shifts for those departments, and thankfully around here and even in North Dakota, we're maybe not. We haven't suffered as much from that, so that's a good thing. But nonetheless, we're still in just like every other agency in the state from the terms of recruiting and retention. We're in the same boat as everything else. So it may be a good plug there for, I guess, what we're trying to do as far as recruiting and retention, some of the ideas that we've been coming up with. Yeah, I mean, right now at the table, we're trying to encourage some sign-on bonuses, financial incentives out of the gates. So these young people in a state where we, current state of affairs, inflation is upon everybody right now. Nobody is immune to that. Finding different ways to help people's checkbooks out. All that stuff is from the Dickinson Police Department side being pushed, and I think we're optimistic about where we're trending and heading in that direction. And I liked where you said it's very important to highlight for the listeners when you hear that and you see in a small community where you guys are following.
like, okay, well, they're always hiring. Well, they're always hiring. Like, what's going on here? Well, okay, step back and you see Fargo, Bismarck PD, Minot's, Williston's, across the state, the region. It really is, there's a broad paintbrush that goes into that conversation.
Right. And it's competitive out there. We lost an officer to Minot here this year, into Bismarck. So it's a little competitive out there. And the other side of the coin then too is, and our former chief, Chief Dossinger, said it many times, we could be full staff tomorrow if we wanted to be. And we have enough applicants of that sort coming through the door, but we continue to maintain a high level of expectation for our incoming recruits. And so we haven't gone to the extremes of some of these other metro areas around the nation that have been lowering standards constantly and just picking up anybody off the street. We still hold that high standard to get through the door here. So it's a little bit tougher to get on with us, but in the long run, it's benefiting the citizens of Dickinson. It's benefiting everybody that's out there working. We don't have these questionable people with questionable values and morals that don't represent the North Dakota spirit. We just don't hire them on. So we'd rather work short per se, and I think the guys on the street are still like that too. We'd rather get the best and the brightest, and we have been. I mean, the applicant pool hasn't been big, but we've had some diamonds in the rough recently with some of these recent hires. You see these guys on calls out in the street, and you just have that sense of pride. So if you do see that baby blue patch on scene, you definitely know that officer's been extremely vetted. They're extremely talented, and we're extremely fortunate to have them here. Yeah,
no, that's a nice plug, Mike. Nice plug. The another one that I think maybe is trending as we do this recording today, we just came out of a conversation, is a regional-wide active shooter threat that's been taking place as part of what will just a ploy scam, false information that's being called into 911 centers. And so been working with some entities around the state on that and some how they've been handling it. And us ourselves been working very tightly with the school district in our response to that, if that does in fact come to our community. But got a lot of texts over the last couple of days, people concerned about things that were hitting social media, and we're on it. We're paying attention to it. And I know, Mike, with your communication division there, they're prepared for if in fact that does happen here.
Sure. And when instances like these happen, just for the public knowledge up here, every state, I'm pretty sure every state in the nation now has some sort of what we call a fusion center. So it's an intel center, usually operated by the state at some level, and all these agencies provide data to them. So and then in the same vein, they actually turn around and provide information back to all of our agencies, so we're all kind of all on the same page. So when this hoax happened yesterday, thankfully it didn't hit our side of the state. It was mainly I think towards the east, Fargo, Grand Forks,
Williston
Jamestown.
got one.
Williston did get one. Okay.
Williston did, yeah.
So we prepped our staff on it. We still respond. Obviously, we have to take these serious. But this threat in particular was very reminiscent. If any of the listeners remember the DSU bomb threat that we had 2-3 months ago here
during the summer,
very, very similar in nature. So it sounds like maybe a foreign accent type of thing. So I don't know if the extended vehicle warranty guys are just getting bored, but right. This is beyond. All the chaos that it causes, and obviously it makes the parents worry. But we have to take it serious, and we continue to do so. And hopefully we can get this information up to federal partners for prosecution.
Yeah, and to a certain lesser degree, holiday season here, scams. There's going to be a massive increase in packages and different things throughout the mail. The porch pirating that we've seen over the last 2 years here has come through with ebbs and flows and trends. And we would just ask this episode hits you guys that you guys are on top of that. There's a variety of ways out there for some personal safety, but having those items shipped maybe to areas where people are going to be able to receive them, your Ring door camera settings, turned on, turned up. There's a plethora of ways you guys can go about that and think, during this course of time to avoid being a victim in it. But hey, we got a great community, but always good to be vigilant.
And a good plug maybe for the Neighbors app that Ring offers. So if you do have a Ring product, you can integrate you can share your surveillance video. In fact, I saw one the other day, someone getting a bike stolen from their driveway.
Are you a Ring customer?
I'm a Ring customer, yes. So it works really well. And if you don't have a Ring product, you can still sign up for this app. And not only does Ring push out notices, we at the department level push out notices. So if there's a suspect or vandalism spree coming on, we can push that information. And for those Ring customers, we'll ask you to check your footage to see if there's anything that you could help us with. And it's an easy share back to us to retain that evidence. But if you don't have a Ring product, you'll still get that notification, so you're aware of what's happening in your neighborhood. Highly recommend to download that.
Yeah, we've had really good luck in the past with catching some of those videos and certain inside the application for neighbors who are sharing things with each other on suspicious activity that may not necessarily be reported to the Dickinson Police Department. Our guest today can maybe tell a few stories, I'm not sure, but we've intercepted and saw videos that are posted out there that have led us to other cases that have been reported.
All it takes is just that one tip, and it solves the case.
Yeah, no doubt. And goes into, holiday season. We've talked the weather change and stuff. This is some coverage we're going to be doing on here in the next several weeks is in preparation for our upcoming RV ordinance. And so that's a November 1st through March 1st.
Yep, November 1st through March 1st, making sure that you have your RVs that are parked on the street, boats, campers, trailers. Make sure to get those off the street here first part of November. And the whole concept behind that is, I mean, if there was an example, it certainly was last year, bigger snowstorms or consistent snowstorms, we start sending our plows down the road, and if we have to go around those parked vehicles, now we got one berm, and then the next snowstorm we got a bigger berm, and now that street's virtually impassable, and it's really tough to get those dug out. So just get those off the street. We kind of have more of an education enforcement effort that they usually goes out that first part, but after that you could potentially face a parking ticket for it. So just get those off the street. Yeah,
and I think that's a nice thing to highlight there. When the guys and gals are out there hitting on this right away, they're going to try to reach out, communicate, and we're going to do all kinds of stuff on social media. Mike posting and blasting out there. Make sure you're sharing that stuff so that everybody has a nice opportunity to prepare or make whatever arrangements they need for some of those things, because we understand it's kind of a pain.
Yeah, it is.
Those toys, but
sad to put them away for the year, but gotta winterize and put them away.
Yeah,
think of better times.
And then that's maybe the last thing here. We're going to be coming after and blasting the community on an upcoming food drive. The Dickinson Police Department is going to be heading up. We have our SROs and our community officers division that's going to be handling that. And so you'll see some stuff posted coming up related to donations, and we're going to be working with our local grocery stores and Walmarts and things like that to bring in and hopefully feed some families for Thanksgiving. And we did this several years ago and had a lot of luck with it. It takes a little bit of work, but that's going to be something coming your guys' way, and we really encourage you to stay tuned for that, and hopefully we can get a good response from the community to help get some items out there to families in need over the holiday season.
Yeah, especially this year, it's going to be vitally important. I think just with the state of the economy and everything, I think there's going to be a little bit more need out there than there has been in years past. So definitely help out if you can.
Yeah, agreed. Well, let's, without further ado here, I think it's time. He's had enough of a chance here to get that familiarization with the conversation. But Detective Sergeant Travis Leintz, good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
T-Bone.
How's it feel to be in the hot seat today?
It's good. It's highly anticipated, and just hopefully we'll knock it out of the park today for you guys.
Yeah, we had you. You had a little chance to kind of watch a few others come through the hot seat and get a chance to kind of rock and roll and see what some of this is going to be about. We thought we'd get you first, but we're like, well, we'll give them a chance to see a few of these other ones.
Yep, I definitely did watch a couple just to see what I was in for.
Trav, Mike, you and I, we have all worked together for an extremely long time here, and now we're at a state in our careers where we are quote unquote the old dogs a smidgen in some of the conversations, which I look at as a good thing, not a negative connotation on it. But I tell a few of the listeners right now that are paying attention and watching this about Travis and born and raised and all that jazz.
Well, born in Dickinson, grew up in Gladstone. through my whole childhood, and then attended Dickinson Public Schools, probably middle school, graduated Dickinson High School here in 1996. And then from there, moved on, just kind of did some road construction. Then from road construction, worked at TMI in town here. Then in 2005, I was hired on as a police officer here at the Dickinson Police Department. But
so did you guys, were you on a farm? Did you guys have a farm or anything in Gladstone, or
no,
were you in town?
No, it was just in town, yeah. I think when I was living there, it was maybe 200 to 300 people.
Okay.
I think is the population. I'm not sure what it is now, but
gotcha.
I'm sure it's grown a little bit, but not too much.
Yeah. And you attended Dickinson Public Schools?
Yeah, from 7th grade to graduation.
Gotcha. So you got some brothers, brother in the area here, sister in the area here. Yep. So the whole family's got some roots.
Yep.
And is that kind of your passion for staying in Dickinson and being a part of it? How did that play out for you, choosing the Dickinson Police Department?
Well, so back when I first got introduced to the department was the Citizens Police Academy. There was a friend of ours that attended it, and they were doing a recruitment at the mall. And she asked me if I wanted to sign up, and I was like, why not? And see what it is. Obviously, if the listeners or viewers are not familiar, it was a 12-week program. We did it every Tuesday, an hour long. Sometimes it went a little longer. They had guest speakers come in, obviously, like through the patrol, task force, SWAT, and just different entities within the department. And so while doing this, they started the ride-along program. At first, I was kind of sketchy. I was like, let's see what this is. And that was actually my life sentence right there, because I just became addicted to it. And then once I got a little deeper, and I was like, okay, I need more. Just need more. Then at the time, Sergeant Dan Brown was doing a talk, and he was overseeing the reserve program. And I'm like, okay, well, let's look at this and see how this is going. And so I applied for that, got on. Obviously, the program's no longer here, but started doing that, and again, just needed that fix, needed more, and applied a couple times, and I got turned down. But again, I was persistent, and I was like, this is what I want, so I'm going to go for it and go a little harder. So I actually started my degree, with the criminal justice degree, and through I had a business, the administrative part of it, and at the time, chief, I think it was Gary Banyai, was the chief, and he was just retiring, just walking out the door. He's cleaning out his office, and I came in, and they're like, well, how about Lieutenant Chuck Rummel? He oversaw the investigative division. I was like, sure. I never met Chuck before. And I was like, all right. So we sat down, and we had a nice talk, and he asked me what my goals and plans were and what I've done so far. And he's like, yeah, well, keep going, keep trying. And one day I looked in the paper and saw he just became chief. And as I was reading the paper, like 15 minutes later, he called me back and asked me if I still wanted a job.
Really?
Yeah. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it was kind of an ironic start to my career. So again, I started in April 2005 and attended the academy in Bismarck. And coming out, I did patrol for about 5 years. Then obviously got introduced to the investigative world. I went through training. I was on crime scene stuff and evidence collection, and again, it became an addiction to me. And I was like, all right, this is what I want. And this was during a transition time when the former chief Dossinger was a captain, and that's when Joe Ciani those two became captains, and there was some movement, and I was patiently waiting. I was kind of a pest, if some people would tell you, because I wanted to get back to investigations, and then they're like, oh, okay, well, keep you in mind. And so, with other people telling me, hey, just make sure to start doing your own casework, to start being better in what you do. And so I took that advice to heart, and then I started, and then they said, hey, we got a spot open in investigations for you. I'm like, great. They're like, but would you be interested in doing internet crimes against children? And I was like, let me think on that. I wasn't sure what the whole program was. They're like, this is what it is. And I'm like, I don't know if that's my cup of tea. So I accepted. And then 2010, and around, I think October-ish, I think is when I got introduced and put back into investigations. And I've been back there ever since.
Who was your first ride along with when you had that ride along? Who was it with?
Oh, that's really testing my memory. That I guess I could.
I
can't say. I honestly don't remember. I remember definitely riding with.
What are some of the details from that you remember seeing?
Not the highlights of that night or anything, but I just remember going around. It was usually a night shift when we did it, and I think Amanda McNamee, who used to work here, was one of them I rode with. There was, I think, Brian Koskovich, Chris Coates, all former and past employees of here. But again, any highlights? There's nothing that really sticks out at me. Maybe it was just the utter fear and excitement being in the car.
And then you mentioned the reserve program. What did that look like? Obviously, we don't have the reserve program anymore, but what was that all about?
So you were issued uniforms. We'd special events. We'd obviously suit up and go work parades, and you could ride along. They had I think 6-8 hours was required, I think, per month or whatever it might have been. I don't know exactly on that, but you could. You weren't issued a firearm, but you could bring your own firearm once qualified and vetted for that. And then obviously you're just like a secondary officer in the seat. I still remember a couple times. It was actually Amanda McNamee. I was on ride along with her, and we did a traffic stop and actually approached the car and prevented the one guy. Said he was going to run, but then ended up seeing me, and he just stayed in the car and he ended up getting arrested. But so a couple of those highlights and stuff. There's some fun times because, obviously we would go to party calls and everything else just like a normal officer. Mm-hmm. So
it was always nice having that extra set of eyes out there. I remember Trav riding with me many a times, and just having that extra person to talk to in the middle of the night too.
Yeah. Keep you awake.
Yeah, and I think the whole reason we had to go away from the reserve, I think there was some more requirements that our department really wasn't in a position to be able to, some training requirements that we just didn't have the time and upkeep to be able to keep that program going, so that kind of faded by the wayside. But
yeah, there's some agencies that are resurrecting. Some things have changed in the state to kind of incentivize those programs. We haven't necessarily taken a hard look at exploring it, just not at that point, I guess you would want to say.
Exactly.
Yeah. But definitely has been something that's been brought up just in passing.
Yeah. Although the Citizens Police Academy, I got to get a plug in here for that really quick too. We're going to really try here in the spring. Every year that we try to get it, COVID got it mixed up, but we've always had a really good group of people in there, and it's obviously garnered attention. And sometimes we've cultivated officers off of that. LaShawn Pickstock, he was one that we end up getting hopefully a lifer cop out of there, and so hopefully in the spring of 2023 here we'll be starting that up again.
Yeah, just a great thing, our community relations in general, get the good people in there. And I think I'm thinking about your timeline here, and the age and the old dogs reference I talked about earlier, and I think you and Mikey, you guys were working on the same night as the horrific or the legendary tornado, is that right?
I was right behind him.
Yeah.
So the video you usually watch is, I believe it was from my camera, but or vice versa, you might have been behind.
Yeah, it was my camera, my car. You were behind.
In front.
Yeah, you were in front. Yeah, it was.
So
that's right.
Yeah, the video you're watching is from Lieutenant Hannell's camera, watching the rear of my squad car.
And that video we have actually, is it on our Facebook page?
Yeah, it's on our Facebook page. I'll probably B-roll it over as we kind of talk about that night. And what do you remember about? Yeah, so it was July 8th,
2009.
789, 789 tornado. What do you remember about that night?
So, actually, it's very vivid because it was actually, not Lieutenant Hannell, but Dusty Dossinger was our sergeant that night. And we heard about the weather coming in. And so, obviously, we posted on several different locations within Dickinson, just kind of spotting and seeing if we could watch for funnel claws and do whatever. And then we ended up getting dispatched to a fight call up by the old American State Bank. Then I believe Dusty and I went up there, and actually there was no fight at all. And the weather started moving in pretty hard, so him and I went under the old awning at American State Bank. And then all of a sudden we got dispatched to 7th Street Southwest there, and about a roof being ripped off from a tornado. So we obviously all went down, and it was hailing. It was super windy, and barely could see.
What's the first, what's your feeling when you hear 7th Street Southwest at that time for the listeners?
A little context there.
Oh, that was where I lived, just right in that area. So I was obviously white knuckling it down there, and we went down there past TMI, and that's when I think our video really starts playing and stuff, and where you're watching it. And then we went down by there was old church down there, driving by that, remember seeing that bricks laying down, everything just laying to the ground and water shooting out the side. And I actually drove through a downburst. And as I was going through it, my car stopped. And I was kind of baffled of why my car just stopped. But when the downburst came through, there's power lines right on my windshield. And I didn't know I hit them until obviously that cleared up and ripped a light bar off my top of my car. And there's some pretty good damage to the car. And it's very memorable.
Sure. Well, there's some more stuff there, because then once that stops and you get out, because I think what's going on in your mind at that time when you're heading down there and all this thing kind of dissipates a smidgen.
Obviously, the family was directly on my mind, and obviously everybody else as well. But one of my life lessons: do not do this. Do not try this at home. But again, wasn't thinking of myself. The down power lines, we had probably there's 2 inches of rain on the road, and I actually went through them to try to get. And I ran to my house because I was determined to get there. So luckily for me, again, don't do this. Don't do as I do. But thankfully that night I made it through there.
Don't run through water where live power lines.
They were dead,
checked.
but I just didn't take the time, or I wasn't thinking of me, I guess.
Yeah, there's always that one policy that shows up later on in the policy books, and everybody gets named that policy. It's usually big bold letters. Do not. Yeah,
that was
the Travis Leintz policy.
That
right
would
there.
be mine.
Obviously, we're lucky we're being able to laugh about some of that there. But I'm sure for you, it had to be a very emotional, traumatic moment, knowing that your family was down there. And they were fine when you got there. The listeners are going to want to know the house and everything.
Couple hail dents and one little chip in my window, and that was the extent of it.
Yeah.
Of course, the neighbor across the street had a camper thrown up against their house. So, it was everything up to the left and to the right and to the further east had some extensive damage. So I did get lucky.
To the north, one block, houses removed from the foundation, the people were in, and it was.
And leading up to that, I specifically remember this was like days in advance they were forecasting this. I haven't seen it before that, and I haven't seen it since on the weathercast. They were forecasting days in advance that we're in this heightened area of severe activity. I remember the emergency manager at the time, Brent Pringle. We had conference calls almost daily with the National Weather Service, and they were saying the same thing. And it was forecasting right for our area. So for that forecasting to be that accurate was pretty amazing. But I think that also credited probably to why we didn't have a loss of life that night. In fact, I think we only had 1 or 2 injuries, but that was all from post-storm cleanup. So it wasn't actually from the storm itself. It was just amazing.
That's your plug for the weatherman that's always called the liar.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah.
So I think we also had a report of a funnel cloud by the golf course or somewhere out there. And I think that's what put us on high alert and posted. So we were watching for that weather to come in.
Yep.
So let's some of the nitty gritty. You've had a long time in criminal investigations, and you kind of worked your career progression, obviously, as you got into investigations and now oversee investigations. And you and I, we have a lot of intimate stories. Obviously, we shared a lot of time together over our career, about 14 years together in investigations directly on a day-to-day with case involvement and stuff. So in my own head, I was thinking about how many of these I wanted to dive back into, but I figured I'm going to talk through your perspective and lens on, how is investigations, the current state of investigations, and how you've seen investigations evolve over your career. Can you talk about any of that?
Yeah, right now, we, in our division, for the listeners and who's not familiar with the department, we have the 4 investigators, myself, criminal intelligence analyst, and a task force officer. That's who's all in our division right now. And really the progressions and the changes within our division and really anywhere is technology. From when I first started, everything was, I still remember doing reports, like accident reports, and then I actually have to drawing them by hand. So technology has really changed society and our division and department really as a whole. But that's probably the most advanced change, I guess, within our division.
Yeah.
But
have you seen that as more beneficial or more detrimental to the case investigations as time has went?
Both. Technology is great when it works, but when it doesn't work, it's a hurdle. I mean, it's just like anywhere else, you know. It's great. We always encourage businesses to have security cameras and everything like that. But the bad thing is when they're down. You're back to square one. But with technology now, it's been a lot easier to link some of those old cases, or finding them, or just gathering evidence for them. Now you look at the geofence warrants and stuff. Those leaps and bounds from 10 years ago when stuff like that wasn't readily available. So when you had a burglary, it's like, all right, where do I go? Okay, so you go back to the old school.
Maybe for those that aren't familiar with what a geofence warrant is, could you explain that a little bit in detail for them?
Well, so it's a Google, and through Google accounts, and they can go to iOS as well, as long as there's some Gmail or YouTube link to there. They essentially, within, I think, about half inch or whatever it is, it's satellite driven versus cellular or like a tower. There is some discrepancies with those, but essentially wherever you go, it's tracking. I mean, it's
your cell phone.
Yeah, your cell phone, and it's usually by what we call a user ID number, and then the user ID number or device ID number is associated with the cell phone and the user or subscriber. And when we get these warrants, we can narrow it down to where our crime occurred, and then we can just find out what user IDs were within that area. Then obviously there's secondary and potentially third warrants that we need to get and acquire to put those other pieces of puzzle together.
I remember vaguely, Congressman Kelly Armstrong on the first couple podcasts when we were talking about geofencing, and even just kind of saying that out loud. I think some citizens may feel, oh, that's a lot of information, potential for
privacy.
Exactly, right. So, and you mentioned warrants a couple times. So, what I walk through like a warrant process? What's exactly required? Because we can't just arbitrarily go and say, hey, we think this person did it. And just go dump their data. What is required on our end in order for law enforcement to get involved?
So obviously it's the whole probable cause thing. Once we respond to a burglary or whatever the case, the incident was, when we go there, we have to have the probable cause, the reasons why we believe something happened or what actually did happen. When we apply for those search warrants through the courts, and if the state's attorneys read it, they'll read our declarations now, and they'll be like, okay, yep, and they'll send it up to the judge, and the judge will say, yes, you definitely have enough probable cause here that a crime has been committed, and those would be sent off to whatever the company or business, whatever it is, and then they will comply with that warrant. And if there's more information needed, obviously we need subsequent warrants to garner that information. So it's just like, people don't hand this stuff out freely. I mean, the private user definitely has privacy, and they honor that, and they're very, very, very strict on what's released. I mean, if it's not in our warrant, they do not give it to us. So, I mean, it's very protected. So hopefully nobody gets that false sense of like, hey, we just are out snooping and getting everybody's information, because it's just not true. I mean, there's a lot of steps and loops we got to go through.
If you were to guess how many cases have been that's been crucial, even recently or in the last couple of years, can you even put a number to how much geofencing has been like the crucial piece to cracking a case open?
So I think we in-house, maybe I think we've done 4 or 5 of them on different cases. So I don't know if that's the exact number, but I believe it's about 4 or 5.
And pretty serious cases too, or
burglaries, stuff like that. And I don't know if it's anything outside of burglaries, but they're predominantly are for burglaries and armed robberies or whatever they were.
Sure.
I think Representative Armstrong had spun it up in one scenario as, he looks at it in our context of, our numbers and our populace in a certain area, and the chances, you're going to get maybe a few identifications out of that area. That's admittingly is what it is. And then, but you go into the same block in a metropolitan area, of course, you're looking at, probably exponentially more hundreds or thousands within that same area there. So trying to draw a little bit of context between the two and justifying, obviously, the position that they have is the conversation surrounds them highly contentious. But the other elements, up here, I think it's good, the internet crimes against children thing. You smiled as you went through that facet of your getting on in your career, getting into it in your career. I think you've been around the community a lot, and some of these people that are watching this may have had you in front of them for some presentations and some talks. And I would just say, there was a period of time in there where, when we were working together, where Travis was probably the number one, number two guy in the state related to internet crimes against children cases, and that is completions, arrests, and stuff like that. So you got a lot of familiarity with them. Let's talk about these for the community. They really enjoy hearing or learning more about them.
Yeah, so when I first started, I think 2011 is when I got certified. There's this two-step process of becoming certified under the Internet Crimes Against Children, and the last one was the undercover chat operations. And after completion, my first year, I think I arrested 12 people, some locals, some out of state, and that's going every year. And then I think for my farthest away was in South Korea. It was on a military base. He was actually a Chinook helicopter mechanic. And that one was tried and prosecuted by Homeland Security. But they said if he wasn't going to take a deal or plead to something, South Korea was going to actually prosecute it. And they said, prepared, you may have to come out here and testify. And I'm like, all right, because I did telephonically at first through the military or the HSI, but the military would have been the ones who would have prosecuted the second one if he wouldn't have did it.
What is Internet Crimes Against Children? What is ICAC for the listeners so they get a background on it?
So it's in all 50 states. So our hub, our ICAC commander, is Jim Shaw out of BCI. He's in Fargo. But essentially what it is, it's a task force that was put together for internet crimes against children, essentially. So we are a proactive and reactive group. So proactive is you get undercover officers who are posing to be a minor child, looking for people, obviously, to engage into conversations or disseminating pictures to minors or potentially meeting them for sexual favors or whatever the case may be, which is a crime. And then once that happens, they would be arrested for those various crimes. And the reactive section is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They receive tips from normal people out in the community or wherever it may be. They can even be from law enforcement of online activity that's not appropriate for children. And it's sometimes, if you hear the word sexting or whatever, but they're sending images or producing child pornography and sending those. Or if we have two other people that are sending each other images, those will get flagged by different means, but and those will get sent to the ICAC commander or the ICAC division, and they said, hey, we got this crime that occurred in Dickinson. So the ICAC commander or whoever their delegate is will say, this is in this jurisdiction. We have ICAC affiliates there, and then we send it to them. So.
How has the underage illegal imagery changed over time? How have you seen that to help our parents and guardians out there? Again, we go back to technology and how young we're putting technology in our children's hands. So from cases I've seen from 8 years old, obviously all the way up. So it is becoming more prevalent, especially in our high schools. When we do talks there, a lot of those kids are like, it's my body, I can do what I want. They really don't grasp and understand what they're doing is actually a criminal offense, and it's actually an A felony to produce child pornography. So that's why we're really trying to get the educational aspect out there and saying, hey, what you guys are doing is not correct. It's not okay. No matter what somebody tells you or society is trying to tell you, criminally it's not okay. But it is becoming a lot easier because obviously technology advances. Everyone has it, so it's just a push of a button. So we see it. Sometimes it's weekly. That's an unfortunate part about it.
And then when you open it up to obviously the internet, that's across jurisdictional boundaries. We have issues with that. So how has that changed your roles a little bit?
Yeah. So once we tell these kids, once you hit send, it's out there. It's gone forever, and there's no takebacks. So again, once these people are transferring child pornography or going cross state lines, we get a federal nexus into the crimes. So those can be prosecuted at the U.S. Attorney's Office versus our local jurisdiction here. And those are being flagged really by a hash set or photo DNA. So that'll probably be a whole nother conversation, but,
well, maybe just real quick though, how that works.
So hash sets, they're essentially a fingerprint of a video or picture. So, once we identify known child pornography, they get sent to NCMEC and they create, a category for it. And then they have that hash set or whatever
which is unique to each
picture. Yep. Unless a pixel's changed or the colors changed or resized, then it changes the hash set. But those are entered in as known child pornography. So when a forensic examiner, like myself or somebody else who's went through the training, it'll trigger that and say, hey, this is a known series or this is a known picture. So we know and we can arrest and charge accordingly to those pictures or videos. And then photo DNA, it just goes on gradients. It was actually developed by Microsoft. So when these people would change a picture or resize it or change it and do whatever, obviously change the hash set, but the photo DNA would still recognize it and say, hey, yes, this is actually this image that belonged to this series.
How many cases right now, about a year on average, are we getting from NCMEC sent that are relevant to our jurisdiction? Just a rough number.
It's like a roller coaster. Sometimes you go through a drought, and then this past month, another Detective Samantha Oki, Corporal Detective Samantha Oki, and myself, we probably got close to 8 within a month.
8 that are relevant to our jurisdiction that we have to follow through, assign, and kind of validate to a good degree. Do we have something here?
Yep, all within Dickinson.
Yeah. The other one here, I think, that related to this topic is in the last month, some of the underage illegal imagery and scams and how that's fell onto some juveniles' laps. Can you kind of tell a few of those reports? We've got those stories just in general.
Yep, and I guess classification, we call it sextortion, and it kind of, there's two parts to it. Adults and minors have fallen to this scam, and so is what happens. They'll meet somebody on Facebook, Snapchat, wherever it may be. They'll go in and start conversing, and they'll say, "Oh, how old are you?" And they'll like, let's just say it's a minor. It's like, "I'm 16. Well, I am too. Why don't you show me a picture of yourself?" And then they start exchanging pictures. Now, it starts off as a normal picture, like, "Hey, just show me a live shot, a screenshot of yourself." And then once they have that, then they start exchanging nude images. And then from there, is kind of when the scam really takes hold. Now they start threatening them, saying, "Hey, if you don't send me this much money or do this, I will put this on your Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it may be, put it on your live feed, YouTube, and I will embarrass you and show everyone what you were doing." And those, it seems like once a week again, and they're really upticking. So we're just encouraging, obviously, if it's a minor, please don't talk to strangers, and just avoid falling into that. Because it is a slippery slope. And then again, once we get those cases, it goes back to going to NCMEC and getting those identified, and those kids identified in the system as known child pornography. So, and it's kind of a horrible scam.
What's the limitations for us on those cases? As great as the technology can be and just bounces back and forth like a pinball, people wonder about, let's find out who these people are and who's doing this. Talk to them about the limitations and difficulties. So
obviously, some of the difficulties we face as investigators when we get these crimes is, it's going to be on Snapchat. Now, there are certain limitations and everything, but Snapchat will provide us and do. But a lot of times they're on proxy servers, which makes it really hard to track them down. They're using voice over IP phone numbers for these type of crimes. And a lot of times, when we see them, they're going overseas, which kind of really stops the investigation because there's no counterparts.
And you use that reference proxy, the proxy servers and those voice over IPs. These are distraction techniques by the criminals that they employ to chase
to throw us off
down rabbit holes and stuff. Yeah,
which make it's like you said, the rabbit hole, and just try to track them down because depending on what the dark web or whatever they're using, I'm not sure exactly what the suspects are on, but there are several facets out there that they can use to cloak their identities.
Yeah, it's so as crazy cool as it can be to help us solve stuff, it can be that much frustrating for us.
Right. This goes back to technology is a blessing and a curse at the same time.
As far as like investigative powers, obviously you have a certain title that's never been held by a Dickinson police officer before. How does that kind of pair up with what we're talking about here?
So along with the Internet Crimes Against Children, in 2019, I was federally deputized with the FBI with a Violent Crimes Against Children Task Force. And what that allows us to do is within House and other agencies, if they have cases that meet this federal nexus, I can take that and I can sponsor the case, take it up to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and we can get it federally prosecuted versus just a state or local charge. Which some of these cases, like they carry 15 to 20 minimum mandatory sentences, which hit a lot harder than, whatever our C felony or B felony cases would get 5 to 10 years. So,
because I'm sorry. So in years past, if we would have something that we felt met a federal piece of criteria, we would actually have to go find like an FBI agent, and usually that's Bismarck, Fargo, or whatnot. But now.
And I did work closely with them along with Homeland Security. I won't mention his name just to say that, but a phenomenal guy. He was a great asset, and he always was willing to help us. And we took many cases up through him. But now we have that capability as well. So,
how many do you think over the course of your career, directly as the assigned case agent, the Internet Crimes Against Children, how many do you think have led to criminal charges? If you had to give for the listener.
So including like our luring cases, child pornography arrests, I actually lost count. I think it was over 40. Yeah, 40. It's 40 plus. I know for sure.
Sure. That's, and you're a father. Obviously, you got a beautiful young family and stuff. Mm-hmm. How have you managed that, just as a human being, and carrying this badge over time? How has that been something you've been able to sustain?
So. And I'm sure if there's any other ICAC officers out there that are watching this or listening to this, is the biggest thing is don't identify the victims you're seeing, because a lot of them were at the same age as like when my kids were. Mm-hmm. Is don't try to put those two pieces together, and so very, keep those separated, and just it is tough because there's some things that you see and hear that no person should see or hear. Yeah. And it's very tough on a person.
Yeah. I don't even think of those other ICAC operators in that sense. I just think of the moms and the dads, we've talked to, and that have brought this up in some of those presentations about like, oh my gosh, they hear one story and they don't know, like I said, the ones that you've dealt with and or the other detectives, which we're talking hundreds, and then you get into the details of imagery and all this different stuff. So I think I go down this hole with you, Trav, because it's a testament to obviously your fortitude and resilience over time, and passion, and being genuinely authentic about loving something or wanting to do something, and how far you can go with it when you actually are passionate about it.
And is what you guys are familiar with the terminology, but some may not. But vicarious trauma. So those things you have to watch out for. And I guess with for me personally speaking, this is again me, not everybody else. This is my faith, is my foundation. Yeah. And that is what I believe is what's carried, not me, but it's what's carried me through and allowed me to be able to do this for the community and those kids out there that don't have the voice to speak up for themselves.
Yeah, just having that gratification of knowing that you, and the one I'm thinking of in my head, and I don't remember the gritty details of it. You might have to help me along, but I remember one of our former city administrators went along to us. Do you remember what I'm talking about here?
100%.
Yeah, I don't know if that fits in with this, but I don't even want to share that story.
So I believe it was 2017. At the time, your sergeant, I believe, had a case. A female came in and. She was a mother, I think, if I remember correctly. Her daughter was tragically killed, and I think it was by a sex offender, if I remember right, sexually assaulted. And, so she bought a storage unit, obviously, that lapsed for payment, and is what they would do is they'd go sell the electronics or whatever the other items were in there that were of value. And going through there were some hard drives, some cell phones, and they were going through them, and they found some child pornography. And now Lieutenant Hennel, he gave those items to me and said, here, you want to take a look at these and see what you can do? And I was like, all right. So kind of an overachiever, and I was kind of see what I can do. And digging through them, and definitely identified some child pornography. And then I found one image that actually looked like a produced one. So checking the EXIF or the metadata within the picture, I did link it to Belfield, North Dakota, and obviously it was like, okay, now I know this is a real life victim, so I better do a little bit more due diligence on this one, even though it wasn't in our jurisdiction. But we decided just to notify I believe we notified Stark County and said, hey, we got this, and we're just gonna kind of run with it. And so I did, and I ended up tracking the kids down there on I believe the East Coast somewhere. I can't remember the exact state right now off the top of my head, but it's like North Carolina, I believe.
So they moved from Belfield to the East Coast.
Yeah, and I just missed them because I checked with the school, did some checking. They're like, yeah, they just left about a month or two ago. And
still with their abuser?
Yep, still with the abuser at the time. We didn't know that at the time, but fast forwarding, we did find out. I did some more checking and found out where they're living, and I reached out to the agency out there, and obviously, no fault to them. They're really busy. It was kind of, some time was passing, and I was like, well, I just became worried because I'm like, well, these kids are potentially still in this environment. So we ended up doing a lead out to Homeland Security out there, and that day they went out and did a knock and talk at the residence. The suspect was there, answered, and they identified themselves and said, hey, this is why we're here. He allowed him in and allowed him to look through his electronics, and they found more production of child pornography and other images, so they arrested him. And he was arrested, brought to jail, and then they did the Child Advocacy Center. They did the forensic interviews, and it was pretty horrific. There's two boys in there that were being heavily abused by this guy. And actually the day before his the advocacy, the forensic interview, he took his own life in jail. So it was a pretty horrific case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a hell of a story.
And then we had after we found that these children had been rescued, we reached when you and I and the city administrator went back out, reached out to this original reporting party, who's, again, her story was tragic as it was, but just to let her know that just by her reporting this, that they got these kids out of the environment. So the gratification that I can't imagine. I know what I felt that day. I can't imagine what you feel when you get these kids out of that environment. That'd have been amazing.
Closing a case, they're all satisfying and fulfilling, but I guess with this capacity and these topics, and those are the most fulfilling for me, and it'll never change no matter if I move up or more in the department or not, but it'll always be there with me, and it'll always be a passion of mine. So hopefully we just get more people to do it, because it is kind of a tough field to get into.
Yeah.
So.
You've heard me say, I think that we'll be hard pressed to see anybody for quite a long time have the same kind of positive impacts, related to these types of cases and crimes as what you've had for the Dickinson Police Department and the community. So that's just another big plug for you there, man.
Absolutely.
Kind of nice to reflect on in conversation and think about, and great. Mike may be able to put in some links or something on the screen for our listeners. Like, you got some advice for some areas our parents can go to for resources to help police these devices and their children?
Again, as I mentioned about NCMEC, they do, I think it's just NCMEC or National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.org, however it's spelled out, but they have so many resources out there. And within probably the next coming week or something, we'll be doing a promotional or a hype video for these internet crimes against children. And it'll be listed hopefully on our Facebook and everywhere else. So I guess stay tuned for that. That's kind of a little teaser for you guys. But again, if they're on any social media platform, there's always that report tab. So we just encourage, if they see something or hear something, just to report it there, and that will get to law enforcement, or they can directly contact us. Or, we always tell kids too, is like, go see your counselor or teachers or your pastor or whatever it may be. If there's somebody that you can trust and rely on, just make sure to go report these things so they don't go unreported. Sure. And again, just a plug out to our, Badlands Crime Stoppers, tip 411. If somebody has information, they can always report with on there, and so they can remain anonymous. They don't have to get their names mentioned in the report. So, but at least somebody is notifying us. Yeah. So if you haven't, please go download the app, the Badlands Crime Stoppers Tip 411 app. And then if you get something that you want to report, if it's not even to this topic, please do so.
All it takes is just that one tip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've seen it many times.
Yeah, and when we got a lot of cases that the investigative division is looking into right now, what are some of the heavy things in the wheelbarrow right now that the detectives are trying to get through? And
well, so there are cases as like a revolving door. There's so many cases coming in and we're closing them. But, again, the season now, the scams are becoming more and more prevalent. We're seeing a lot of internal thefts and burglaries. Violent crime is obviously up on the rise, domestic violence, things like that, aggravated assaults. But those are predominantly the ones that are taking the most time on our caseloads. But
property crimes, we see a lot of property crime cases.
Yeah, and again, as Lieutenant Hell prefaced, with the society, economy is the way they are. We expect to probably see those on the rise even more because people getting laid off of work or whatever the case, whatever their circumstances. Sometimes as a last ditch effort, we see those burglaries or thefts, kind of go up.
And then really to throw an extra load of laundry on the event too is any officer we hire or any dispatcher we hire, we actually have detectives do the backgrounding on it. Do you want to shed some light on that?
So that's usually when that hits our dashboard, for whatever the position may be. It's about a 2-week time frame is what we try to get these done in. And they're pretty, like for a patrol officer, they are very intensive, and a lot of work goes into these. There's all the employer references. We all go there, go to their residences, just kind of do a face-to-face with them as well. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into that kind of eat up an investigator's time. So,
what are some of the other technologies here our citizens should know we are sitting on beneficial for them to we have it to serve their needs and what we're dealing with this technological?
So with the internet crimes against children, we've been granted Cellebrite, it's cell phones, tablets, drones. It can forensically examine those and pretty much create a mirror image of that phone. And we have the Graykey, which is allowing us access into locked devices where normally we could not go there and get that information, again, with search warrants or consent. So we're not just going in there and violating people's rights. So again, those would be gone into after search warrants were obtained. And then Magnet Axiom is for mobile and is kind of a processing tool for these devices.
So this is technology that pulls it out and allows the trained eye to be able to sort through it and then use that data as it may be relevant to the criminal investigation.
Yep. Yeah. So text messages, phone calls, geolocation, depending on what's on the phone, is kind of what we get, and we can sift through and find out, like the little breadcrumbs, and just kind of follow it and go build our case.
I think he's trying to downplay his involvement here with getting Graykey, but Trav was able to really do some talking at a level, because Graykey itself, how much is that? It's a piece of software, more or less.
It's $30,000 a year.
Yeah, it's not cheap at all, but it's very very vital to what we do day in and day out. But how did you come across it?
Well, that actually, when I was down at a conference down at Myrtle Beach, it was for forensic examiners, cybersecurity. Is for civilian and law enforcement. And I kind of started talking to some of the vendors down there, and Graykey was one. And after befriending them, I chatted a little bit more with them, and they actually introduced me to Operation Underground Railroad. They are, if you can research them on the internet, they combat human trafficking, child exploitation. They receive funding from private donors, and they help law enforcement who can't afford these tools or devices. And so they were actually the one that funded us for 2 years on this.
Yep.
So.
And we'll make sure to put that overlay up there, because that's an amazing organization. Yeah. And that's to be able to backfill the funding on that. That's incredible. Yeah. Yep.
We teed you up last episode with obviously a big case that just came to be for us. Mike just did a press release on it. Just thought maybe you talk out loud. It was a really neat conversation, and a couple fist bumps in there that we had when we were able to get criminal charges. And of course, this is a case that's pending there's due process being had here, and so we've released a press release. There's been a criminal complaint that's been signed and just allegations, but just I think it would be nice to highlight highlight what that case was, because many in the community do remember, obviously, the coverage that we had on it, and take it from there, maybe.
So Detective Tiffany Winnery is the one that's working this right now. I think this case has changed hands 3 times in the investigative division, depending on new leads that came in or other detectives leaving the division. But this one recently came up. She had, in 2021, there was a home burglary, vehicle was stolen, some other things were stolen, and then end up recovering the vehicle. She did DNA swabs on it, sent it off, and then we were notified that these samples that we sent off actually matched a sample that was sent back in 2016 with the armed robbery at Come and Go, which is now the Lucky's on East Villard there, which I can't remember exactly the dollar amount, but so that was unsolved for many years. Then we were also notified that also back in 2011 in the state of Washington, that DNA profile matched an unsolved sexual assault. So it's kind of like a hat trick of case closures, hopefully. So yeah, she's still currently, like I said, working on that one, and the suspect had been arrested down in the state of Washington on another charge, and has been extradited out to North Dakota.
I know a lot of people out there are so interested in the forensic side of law enforcement, and we really don't use it a lot, but when it happens, it's phenomenal how accurate it is to start with. Can you kind of explain, you talked about swabs and stuff, how does the process go from when we collect evidence to when we get a profile, and how does that whole process work?
So again, depending on the crime scene and depending what we're collecting, it's usually a fluid, and we can even do a dry rub, but you just taking, I guess, like a large Q-tip, it's a sterile swab, and just putting a little distilled water on it, and then collecting whatever, if it's, I've done for fingerprints, instead of actually lifting a fingerprint, I just swab the oils and the stuff off the glass, or if it's blood or urine, or there's even been fecal particles that have been swabbed and collected for DNA purposes, and then we send those off to our lab, and they run it through the system, and if we do get a match or a notification of a profile match, we'll be notified, and we will have to obtain another known sample. So obviously, again, would be a search warrant, find that suspect, get that sample, send it off for confirmation. That's just by FBI standards that they have to have these done, and just to verify, because this way there is no false accusations.
And who actually does the sampling for us, or the processing of it?
We send it off to North Dakota State Lab, which is in Bismarck, North Dakota here.
And then they just put that profile in the database, and if it matches with the known, then we get notified.
And obviously, it goes through a national, because that's how we were notified of the sexual assault in Washington, because it goes in the national database.
Yep.
And for those that may be wondering, there is no hard timeline on a return or an answer either. There could be something that surprises you in 30 days, and this could be something 4 years from now, it seems like.
And we have seen those, and we're like, all of a sudden we'll get a letter and say, hey, we got a confirmation hit on a sample you sent in, and we look at the date, and it was like,
long time ago.
Yeah, I was like, I don't remember that case, but then you have to just kind of go back in the Rolodex and find it.
And that kind of fills in a little bit. We had Attorney General Drew Wrigley on in the room here, and he was talking about that. One of his initiatives here is going to be trying to tackle the backlog. In fact, I think here just the other day, one of the papers out east had made some mention that obviously some sexual assault kits, which obviously have a DNA component in it, have been sitting on the shelf for quite a while, not being able to process. The capacity at the state lab is just so limited, so that hopefully they can see a turnaround on that.
Yeah, right in the middle of this biennium coming up, that I think we're hopeful to see some things by the end of it, according to local legislators and our Attorney General.
Yep.
You are, you're sitting on a lot of experience, Travis, and I think a lot of times we don't probably sit and reflect enough on some of these little moments and these things. We get caught up in just these shallow moments and just flowing through the day-to-day. So I'm getting your brain spinning a smidgen to think, we got a lot of young men and women here with us that are entering into this field and, looking to make a career out of it, and, trying to find themselves essentially with the uniform on. Where I want to go with this? How do I want to do this? I like this. I don't like this. So you factor that in for yourself, and what's one piece of advice, okay, just one, piece of advice you wish you had when you were a young officer? Something you would echo back, something that you send back their way.
That is gonna.
You've had your time on patrol and through some of these specialties and big cases, juries and promotions and all this stuff, and we've had a lot of heart-to-hearts ourselves, about different things at different times, and
And I guess for me, and if you look at the history of what I've done and stuff, is don't close a door that's not even been opened yet. Something that's presented to you. Obviously, be open-minded about it, and just not, because again, like back when I was on patrol, I was dead set. I'd never go back to investigations. Never. And I guess just being open-minded and try to be a more well-rounded officer or whatever the case may be, is just explore these avenues and just make yourself better, because once you do that, you're only really benefiting the department, because then you can wear those many hats and be where you need to be.
Okay, good.
Like it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're getting here down. We're just over an hour. I don't know, Mike, do we have anything else that we want to try to squeeze out of him while we got him here?
Yeah, they got these opportunities that come. We might just have to have them back, though, because there's just so much. There's so much other stuff that I don't think we've even scratched the surface on that Trav really does very well for our department, and between the public talks and stuff, and being able to maybe disseminate that a little bit further on our podcast audience at some point. We might not be off the hook just yet for
part two.
To be continued.
That's why I said that hairline is what it is. There's just so much that's filling there over time that
I'll go with that.
There you go.
Yeah. But we always like to finish these episodes, Trav, with a little speed cuffing.
Yeah.
And so you hear that in the background. Ooh.
Threat fire.
Yeah, a little threat fire. And the idea here is we're once the music starts, we'll get 30 seconds. We're going to try to blast you with as many things as we can, and we'll see what we can get for an answer off you. And I might try to throw a couple curveballs in there, just so you know. But
I'll duck.
Yeah. So you feel like you're ready for it here?
Fire away.
So let's see what we can do with you there.
Here we go.
All right. Favorite Bible verse?
That's going to be a tough one. There's too many.
What music is playing in your vehicle right now?
Nothing.
Good answer. If you weren't a police officer, you would be what?
Probably a carpenter.
Would you rather have a dirty bathroom or a dirty kitchen?
Kitchen.
Person or property crime?
Person.
Taco Bell 6-pack and a pound or 2 McDonald's cheeseburgers?
Taco John's.
Yeah. 6-pack and a pound. All right. Yeah, that's good. Well, a little fun at the end there, Trav, but in another serious moment here. Really appreciate it. You sit and you think about it. You've done a lot of great things for this community outside of this department, big picture stuff, and that's essentially what this ride is about. Mm-hmm. It's why we get into it and we want to do it. And you have done an immense service to the community up to this point in your career, with many years left to go, hopefully.
Yeah. 11, but who's counting?
As long as that leg holds up for you. Okay, dang knees.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Mike, do you got anything?
It's actually, I don't know. We may or may not be hiatus, because got some twins on the way here. So, Congrats in advance if we don't hit another episode between then. So, that's what due date is approximately coming up here pretty soon, right?
Sooner than later, I think Mama would tell you, here in November, just about Thanksgiving time. We got an induction date set. But panic stricken, and if I get on camera after this, when this is all said and done, I probably will not look the same.
It's a good thing you don't have it here.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
But congrats in advance, man.
Yeah,
so we're happy for you.
Yeah, we appreciate that. 2 healthy baby girls. We're crossing our fingers, and that'll be joining the world. And
back to diaper duty.
Diaper duty, about 14 diapers a day is what it's looking at right now. But I appreciate that, and I'm sure Mama does too. So she's doing well.
That's good.
We'll be coming back at you here soon, though. Over the holiday seasons, we'll get you guys something as we head into the outro here. We want to make sure you guys continue to share all this stuff: Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon Music, liking the YouTube channel, the Facebook page, which we're up on that 14,000 plus, just keeps climbing.
Thanks to you guys.
That's it. And so thanks a bunch, guys. Happy holidays coming up, and we really appreciate everything you guys do for support.
Yeah, take care of one another.
See ya.